I come from a culture that values dereliction, the romance of picturesque ruins, collapsed castles, the melancholy of abandoned potato beds, lazy beds, those haunting reminders of the great famine of the 1840s spread out to Ireland's more remote quarters. Looming above the village of Templeogue, the suburb where I grew up, were the burnt-out remains of the notorious Hellfire Club, where supposedly the devil manifested during a card game, upsetting the candles and sending the consternated, dissolute youth, all Satanists, fleeing from the burning building. It's a grim legacy, but we kind of loved it. Back in the 1970s, between the village of Templeogue and Montpelier Hill, atop of which the Hellfire Club was perched, was mile after mile of abandoned farm fields. Those fields are long gone now. But back then, our garden wall separated on the one side the cozy domestic world of my parents, and the other side, the feral world of rank vegetation, foxes, badgers, birds, and the most unspeakably uncouth children set free to roam the world completely unsupervised. It was on that side of the wall that I first encountered and conducted my experiments on decay. I'd found this huge beech tree, at the base of which there was a little hollow. And into the hollow I stuffed twigs and mud and leaves. The rain turned all of this into a kind of a soup. Time turned the soup into a putrid sludge. And I transformed the sludge into projectiles, which I hurled at friends and foe alike. How we laughed. So now that I think about it, I might have been the only one that was laughing. Listen, thank you. I was not a particularly morose child, although I think in my thinking and later in my research interests, gravitated more towards decay than to growth, to the processes of decomposition rather than that of production. So it's with that in mind that I want to invite you to reflect upon the kingdom of decay. I think you'll benefit from the visit. There's a certain beauty, an oleaginous, oily beauty. But also, I think when you reflect upon the shadow realm later, you'll realize that it can provide some help in thinking about a lot of trials and tribulations. Some of the mundane ones, but also some of those existential questions that keep us all awake at night. Why is my hair so gray? The declining vitality of the body, and even the loss of loved ones. When you reflect upon decay, you realize that of the faded object, there always remains a trace. That's a clarifying thought. As a reasonably young adult, I got a chance appointment to work on a research project on Irish forest soils. My job was to look at decomposer organisms, mites, calembula, that whole army of decomposers that slobber down on dead organic matter. And about 20 years later, my signal professional achievement is this. Anytime a scientist says decomposition occurs faster in the tropics than it does in the temperate zone, a fact so blindingly obvious it might not need any validation at all, it's my research that is often cited. That's because about 25 years ago, I brought bags of a single chestnut oak individual from North Carolina down to the tropical forests of Costa Rica and Puerto Rico. And there, I watched over the course of a year as they dissolved to nothingness. Then it's what I've made of my life, a contemplation, sustained, productive, interesting as far as these things go, on how all organic things lurch towards nothingness. It's prepared me. Well, it's prepared me for what exactly? It's prepared me, I suppose, to contemplate decomposition, decay, corruption, breakdown, moldering, putrefaction, tainting of all organic things, all things, in fact, if you exclude possibly love. Can you think of anything at all that resists decay? And as for love, maybe it too withers on the vine. As I mentioned, all of these synonyms of decay, several things may have come to mind. Bodies and fallen leaves, sure, but also cities, atomic nuclei, solar systems, social systems, that carton of milk you've left in the fridge, the aging of your body, the trellising of your skin, cities, friendships, that banana neglected in the fruit bowl, ancient civilizations, contemporary civilizations, and driven by the ineluctable thermodynamic laws of entropic decay, the universe itself hurtles towards its eventual heat death. The cosmos, like an old man, sinking finally into his twilight bed, reaches at long last a constant and uniform temperature. If you're not familiar with the concept of entropy, you probably need to be. Because entropy is the guest at every party. It's the fly in every ointment. It's the regent of the world. This is decay's kingdom that you're living in. If you see anything that's not decaying right now, you need to ask, why not? Why are you not decaying? Why do living things in particular not instantly fall apart? This was a question that was posed by the physicist Erwin Schrödinger in a short, aptly titled book, What is Life?, written at the height of the Second World War, possibly the most influential scientific essay of the 20th century. And his question was, why doesn't life decay to equilibrium? His answer is profound, but fairly straightforward. He says that living things retain their order by feeding constantly on order elsewhere. So as the living thing endures, it creates an equal or greater amount of disorder around it. And even as it endures, decay is constantly nibbling at the edges. We age. Just look at me. We die. Not yet. Life and environment are indissolubly linked. And humans who disorder most can at best just disorder less. No environmental policy can demand more than that. The great challenges of our era, climate change, biodiversity loss, the fundamental kind of reconfiguring of the biogeochemistry of the planet, these are all entropy problems, problems of decay. Listen, you're not going to stop entropy, but you can manage disrepair. That's the challenge. In more recent years, I've been thinking about the broader ambits of the concept of decay. Decay is not just a concept within the environmental disciplines. With that in view, I've ransacked as many literatures as I can get around to reading, looking for a set of commonalities, looking for the laws of decay. If we must live in the kingdom of decay, and we must, then what are the rules? So it turns out there's a lot of them. I'm just going to mention two. Decay is not just the property of the decaying object. It takes a village to fall apart. When you think of those dead leaves needing moisture, temperature, that whole army of decomposers, you maybe realize that That's not just true of dead leaves, painted canvases, infrastructure, buildings, even villages themselves, given the right circumstances. Just think of Chernobyl. And if it takes a village to come apart, then in order to manage and resist decay, you need to manage the entire village. Second law, when the ghost leaves the decaying machine, it does so in an eerie way. Gilbert Ryle, the philosopher, in kind of ridiculing the Cartesian distinction between the body and the mind, referred to the mind as the ghost in the machine. The mind is certainly a very peculiar property of the body. It can't be traced to the behavior of any individual neurons or brain parts, but it seems to emerge from the body. And so too, life itself, the vital forces, seem to emerge from the living entity. This apart was Schrodinger's question. But there's always a point in the decay of any complex object where the ghost leaves the machine, where that which had emerged is now gone. The bridge collapses, or the mind and identity of the beloved one with dementia fades away. The ghost leaves the machine. When I was very young, a wall separated two worlds. The feral world where I first had my experiments with decay, and then my parents' world. Decay has surely leapt the garden wall and is sauntering up the garden path. My mother is, by all objective measures, an elderly woman. Hi, Mom. And alas, and sadly, my father died while I was preparing this talk. My mother was at his side. So yes, love endures. As my father declined, it was precipitous. I just think about this world of a great traveler, a polymath. It shrunk to the pinprick of bed and his chair. His memories started to fade like pages falling out of a well-thumbed book. Moments after he died, I held his hand, and it was still warm. 2 days later, I clasped his hand one last time in his open casket, and it was so cold. I had never, perhaps until then, realized just how cold is the lifeless air. From dust you come, to dust you will return. Thus, at the beginning of Genesis, God enjoins us to always keep the decay of the flesh close to our mind. So what is to be done? At the beginning of the talk, I asked you to come along on a reflection about the kingdom of decay. Reflection, that weirdest form of action. So reflect, and then, I don't know, wash your teeth, work out when you can, bring your car in for its routine maintenance. But more seriously, more fundamentally, you have to resist whenever you can. You got to rebuild whenever necessary. And you have to accept because you must. I think back now to my parents in their youth and their vigor, and it gives me an enormous joy. But I also remember in those final months, as my father was fading, every so often, he would remember a story from his youth, and not just any story. Some of the best, funniest stories, the ones that would have us weeping with laughter. The ones that he thought were so buried that he would never find them again. Thank you.